Good afternoon, everyone. In a matter of 24 hours, we went from extreme MAGA Republicans breaking their agreement with President Joe Biden and the American people to putting a bill on the House floor with devastating cuts that would have undermined the health, the safety, and the economic well-being of the American people, including in many categories 30% or more, cut from incredibly important programs like public education, providing food to women, infants, and children, ensuring that Social Security recipients could address any interruptions with the checks that they need. We went from devastating cuts that would have impacted the health, the safety, and the economic well-being of the American people in 24 hours to a spending agreement that meets the needs of the American people across the board. Entirely consistent with what Democrats have said from the very beginning is the only path forward. A bipartisan spending agreement that keeps government open, avoids a catastrophic government shutdown, and meets the needs of the American people in every possible way. We said from the beginning that we were going to protect Social Security, protect Medicare, protect Medicaid, protect public education, protect public safety, protect those individuals who secure us all across the land, protect veterans, protect our ability to continue to combat the climate crisis, protect the economy, and protect the ability of our government to provide for the health, the safety, and the economic well-being of the American people. And that is what the spending agreement that Democrats overwhelmingly supported on the floor of the House of Representatives accomplished today. We're on a path to avoid a catastrophic extreme MAGA Republican shutdown and to continue to meet the needs of the American people. The American people have won. The extreme MAGA Republicans have lost. It was a victory for the American people and a complete and total surrender by right-wing extremists who throughout the year have tried to hijack the Congress. Moving forward, we will continue to work in a bipartisan way to discuss a year-end spending agreement consistent with our values, meeting the needs of the American people, solving problems on their behalf, and putting people over politics. That is what the spending agreement that passed the House floor today has accomplished. And moving forward, that will be our guiding principle in getting things done for the American people. It's now my honor to yield to Catherine Clark, the distinguished House Democratic Whip.
Thank you so much, Mr. Leader, for those comments and for leading our caucus and putting the American people's voice into this process. And of course, for your hour today, setting out the vision that Democrats have and the contrasts with the MAGA extremists. Today, Democrats have ensured that those interests, the American people, have won out over the demands of MAGA extremists. But only after months of Speaker McCarthy and the MAGA majority playing chicken with the lives and livelihoods of the American people. They have brought us to the edge of a needless shutdown, trying to blackmail the country into accepting their extreme right-wing agenda. And today, Democrats came to the rescue. Speaker McCarthy admitted defeat and asked Democrats to put out the fire that he and his party had started. We proved today that Democrats will continue to unify around our shared values. We will continue to put the concerns of the American people first, and we will not allow the twisted priorities of the MAGA Republicans to become law. As we move forward, as the leader said, we will continue to try and build a budget in a bipartisan way that will meet the needs of the American people and live up to the spending agreement that Kevin McCarthy has already agreed to back in June. And I call on Speaker McCarthy not to let the pro-Putin part of his conference win the day and bring a vote to the floor on assistance to Ukraine so we can continue to defend their democracy and our own. And with that, I yield to our amazing champion for our caucus chair, Pete Aguilar.
Thank you, Whip Clark. I want to start by thanking Whip Clark and the floor team who helped guide our efforts and guide our success, what you saw here today. And to Leader Jeffries, who spoke so eloquently on the House floor about our shared values, but also about our path ahead and how difficult it has been that the MAGA extremism has permeated the Republican conference for so long. And when the Democratic caucus, when I convened them with Vice Chair Liu, and we needed more time to read the text and to read the document, it was Whip Clark and Leader Jeffries who wanted to ensure that members had the time and the space to understand what was in this package. Because for the Democratic caucus, and this isn't the same for the Republican conference, the details matter. Helping people is why we come here. We want to make a difference in our communities. We want to help our communities. And in order to do that, we wanted to make sure that we got it right. And because of our actions and the unity of the Democratic caucus that you saw on full display here today, we were able to do just that. We were able to put the needs of the American public first. We were able to keep government open, protect our communities, ensure that service members were not asked to go to work without getting a paycheck. Those are the types of things that we can do because of our Democratic unity. So privileged to be part of this team and to be a member of the Democratic caucus who helped deliver and put people over politics. Leader Jeffries.
Again, excuse me, thank Whip Clark and Chairman Aguilar for their tremendous leadership in holding the caucus together throughout this entire process as we've been battling extreme MAGA Republicans and their reckless effort to try to dramatically cut services for everyday Americans or shut down the government. And we were able to stop that from happening. And House Democrats stood together in that regard. And I thank Catherine and Pete for their tremendous leadership. Questions?
Are you concerned about the accusation that Congressman Jamal Bowman is accused of pulling a fire alarm in a congressional office building? And what are the next steps here?
I haven't seen the video. Until I see the video, I'll have no further comment.
Do you believe that now that we've reached this point where the speaker was willing to buck against the conservative wing of his party, that will then guide the appropriations process? You only have 45 days now to get all 12 of these bills passed. Do you believe that you're now in a space where those real negotiations can happen? Or are we going to go through this process all over again 45 days from now?
From the very beginning of this Congress, House Democrats have made clear that we are ready, willing, and able to find common ground with our Republican colleagues whenever and wherever possible to advance the needs of the American people. But we will also at the same time continue to combat Republican extremism whenever necessary. Over the next 45 days, we're going to have to work together in a collaborative fashion to make sure that we avoid another government shutdown drama, that the extreme MAGA Republicans will continue to try to visit upon the American people, and at the same time, make sure that we put the national security needs of the American people ahead of the extreme MAGA Republican pro-Putin caucus. Sooner rather than later, it's important in order to lift up the national security needs of the American people and ensure that America's place in the free world will continue. And we've experienced great leadership from President Biden in that regard. As Catherine Clark mentioned, we need to address the security situation in Ukraine to ensure that the Ukrainian people can continue to fight bravely and courageously and defeat Vladimir Putin and Russian aggression. It's important for democracy. It's important for the principle of freedom. It's important for truth. It's important for NATO. And the extreme MAGA Republicans will have an opportunity over the next few days to put the American people and our national security interests first, and the extreme MAGA Republican pro-Putin caucus last.
Leader Jeffries, quick question, Eric Garcia with the Independent. This is the second time that Democrats have had to bail out Speaker McCarthy and House Republicans on spending things, first with the debt limit and now with this. How confident are you that in the future you can negotiate in good faith with Speaker McCarthy and the Republican conference when it comes to now that these next 45 days you have to get these spending bills across the finish line?
Well, House Democrats are going to continue to put the needs of the American people first and to work in a bipartisan way with our colleagues in the Senate, as well as with President Biden. And it's our hope that the traditional Republicans will finally take their party back from the extremists who have hijacked this Congress from the very beginning of this new Republican majority. And time and time and time again, House Democrats have had to come to the rescue to push back against the extremists and to ensure that we're doing the right thing for the American people. And that is what we'll continue to do. Let me yield to Catherine and Pete to answer that question as well.
I'll just tell you, and both of these questions have been a little bit about the appropriations process, and it's our hope. I echo what the leader said. It is our hope that we can work in a bipartisan process. What we have seen is that no spending bills will happen without Democratic support. It should be an opportunity to work together to encourage the Appropriations Committee to come together and to put out bipartisan bills. But that would mean that Republicans would have to do away with the extremism. They would have to do away with their policy writers. They would have to do away with their assault on women's reproductive freedom. And I don't know if the Republican conference is willing to do that, but it's my hope that we can get there because that's what the American people expect. And by the way, as the whip said, we've got some trust issues. We need to make sure that Republicans abide by the deal that their own leader, the Speaker of the House, negotiated. And we will do that moving forward.
Yeah, I think our commitment to bipartisanship was crystal clear back in June when we had 314 votes coming out of the House, almost a 50-50 split between Democrats and Republicans saying, lots of things we don't like in this default compromise, but it's a compromise to make sure we don't allow MAGA Republicans to drive our economy over the cliff. Here we are again today. And what we can say is that we will continue to work for the American people, to put the issues around lowering their costs of living, making sure that we are addressing the crisis that they want for our public schools. Their proposal was to cut 150,000 teachers from public schools and to stop their march on a national abortion ban, criminalizing healthcare for women and for doctors. So we will continue to put those priorities first. But when it comes to putting them first, making sure the American people are at the center of our work, we will do that in a way that is bipartisan if there is any opportunity.
Anything change in that bill? It seems like you were speed reading. You almost characterized it that way. Anything they tucked in there you didn't expect or may have been a twist?
We needed to create the time and space to be able to evaluate the bill. At the very beginning of this Congress, extreme MAGA Republicans said that any legislation put before the House would only be done if there were at least 72 hours to review the legislation. That was the House Republican rule and the promise that was made by their speaker to the Congress and to the American people. And earlier today, at the 11th hour, this continuing resolution was dropped on the American people. And so, at minimum, we wanted to make sure, given the trust issues that exist, that we had the time and space to read the four corners of the agreement in order to determine whether it met the needs of the American people. And when we read the four corners of the agreement, it was clear to us that this spending bill was a complete and total victory for the American people and a total defeat for the extreme MAGA Republicans. Let me also thank publicly Leader Schumer and the Senate Democrats, because part of the reason why we had the space to get to a place where we reached a bipartisan agreement in the House is because Leader Schumer and Senate Democrats have been working in a cooperative and bipartisan way for weeks in the Senate, setting forth the only pathway forward. And as a result of that, you had House Democrats in alignment with Senate Democrats. Both of us were in alignment with Senate Republicans. All of us were in alignment with President Biden on behalf of the American people. You had the extreme MAGA Republicans on an island all by themselves. And as recently as yesterday, put forth a draconian bill that would have slashed and burned the ability of the federal government to meet the health, the safety, and the economic needs of the American people. But largely as a result of our unity within the House Democratic Caucus in fighting for everyday Americans and putting people over politics, and because Senate Democrats had set the stage, thanks to incredible leadership by Senator Schumer and his team in working in a bipartisan way with his Senate Republican colleagues, we were able to arrive at a place where the American people won.
Congressman Patrick said today that he expects that there would be Democrats in the instance of a motion to vacate that would vote to table it, because that vote would be whether you want to reward or to punish two-party bills on the floor. Do you see it that way at this point?
We haven't had a discussion about any hypothetical motion to vacate, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Do you think Speaker McCarthy did the right thing today in putting up this CR for a vote?
I think the House, led by Democrats, were able to accomplish the right thing on behalf of the American people.
I wanted to follow up on your commentary about speed reading the bill and making sure you could look at all four corners of the agreement. It's no secret that you and Speaker McCarthy have a mutual respect for each other. Do you think he, ignored his own 72-hour policy in order to make sure that it didn't give his members enough time to sort of, hijack this bill and give this bill a real shot of passing?
I have no idea, but we understood when Whip Clark and Chairman Aguilar and myself met with our leadership team in the House that we needed to create the time and space for every member of Congress to read the bill and be able to come to an informed conclusion as to what was the right thing to do for the American people. I don't know why this bill was dropped on the Congress at the 11th hour in terms of what dynamic was going on the other side of the aisle, but we knew that the right thing to do for the American people was to find a bipartisan path forward to avoid a catastrophic extreme MAGA Republican government shutdown, but make sure that we were doing it in a way that we didn't undermine the needs of the American people. And And Catherine appropriately, Whip Clark, made a motion to adjourn temporarily to create the time and the space for members of Congress in an intelligent way to read the four corners of the bill. Chairman Aguilar convened the caucus to be able to do that and talk through what the provisions of the bill would actually do in terms of their implications for the American people. And I was able to spend a few minutes on the House floor.
So did you find out about this CR when everyone else did this morning? You had no tip off by the speaker that it was coming?
We did not see the text of the bill until about 5 or 10 minutes before the vote was actually called, which is why we needed to create the space for the American people and members of Congress on their behalf to evaluate whether we were able to get something over the finish line that both avoided a government shutdown and was consistent with the American values that House Democrats have been fighting for from the very beginning, and that did not contain a single poison pill or policy rider that the extreme MAGA Republicans were trying to jam down the throats of the American people. Once we concluded that the bill that would be before us met the needs of the American people, would avoid a catastrophic government shutdown that the extreme MAGA Republicans were trying to visit on the American people, and didn't have a single ideological right-wing policy rider, that it was clear how we were going to move forward.
Thank you, Leader Jeffries. So I know you often rebuke some of the extreme Republicans in the House. But you rarely talk about your relationship openly with Speaker McCarthy. He said you guys talked yesterday. Can you talk to me about the dynamics between both of your relationship right now? What does that look like? Is there any tension, after everything you've been through in this Congress?
I think as Democrats, we were able to make sure that we passed a bill that meets the needs of the American people. The bill was put on the floor. After evaluating it, we came to the conclusion that we were going to make sure that it passed, despite the fact that a majority of Republicans voted against their own bill, because it represented a path forward in a bipartisan way that made sense for everyday Americans.
You talked a lot about the American people, but what about the Ukraine? Are you not afraid that it might have a negative impact on Ukraine's ability to fight against Russia? That there's no fresh money for the next 45 days?
As I mentioned earlier, we have to get to work on this issue, and that should be done sooner rather than later to ensure that we are providing the Ukrainian people with the resources necessary to continue to fight courageously and to defeat Vladimir Putin and Russia. House Republicans will have a choice in the next few days when we reconvene on Monday. Are they going to stand up for freedom, democracy, truth, and the Ukrainian people? Or will they continue to bend the knee to the pro-Putin caucus in the House Republican Conference? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.